Hello, deep learners. I'm Andrew Ng, founder of deeplearning.ai, and I'm excited to welcome you to our global deep learning community. I know that many of you are here today because you want to break into AI and build your career. I hope that being part of this community will help you to do so. To give you a proper welcome, I'd like to show you around the deeplearning.ai offices and meet some of the teams so that you can see where it all happens.
Oh, hi, Andrew.
Do you want to tell our friends at Pine AI what you do at deeplearning.ai?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I make articles and other media that help people learn about AI and help them understand the huge impact that AI is having in the world. Today, I'm putting together the next issue of The Batch, our weekly newsletter, and I'm looking for the biggest stories of the week to keep our readers informed.
What's been the most surprising thing you've run into working on The Batch?
How much is going on in this field? There's never a dull moment. You might think from the outside that machine learning engineers really understand everything about AI, but nobody understands everything about AI because this field is just coming to life right before my eyes as I put this thing together every week.
All right, I know you're really busy, so I'll let you get back to it.
Thanks. See you later.
Let's go meet Kian, who helped me create the deep learning specialization. He's working on an exciting new project. Hey Kian, so do you want to tell the people at Pine AI what you're working on?
Yes, sure. I'm leading a project called Workera, focusing on helping people get offers in AI and navigating their career by testing their skills, preparing for interviews and certifying them, as well as matching and referring them to good jobs in AI.
That's really cool. And what's the most exciting part of your day?
You know, the AI field is new, organizations and jobs are still misunderstood. So I'm excited to help people understand what different types of jobs exist in the field, what tasks they will work on, and what skills are needed to achieve those tasks.
That's really important work. Well, it's nice chatting. And now let's go chat to Hotel, who is on their product team.
Hey, Andrew.
Do you want to say hi to our friends at Pine AI and let them know what you're working on?
I would love to. Hi, everyone. I lead the product team in deeplearning.ai, where we create AI education content accessible to people all around the world. People like you.
And what are you most excited about right now?
I am so excited to see our community grow and to see how eager people are to learn more about AI.
Thanks, also.
Thanks, Andrew.
So, as you can see, our team is working hard to support you and help you learn. It's never been easier than before to break into AI. So if you want to build a career, you can leverage online resources available, including open source code, datasets, papers, and online courses like a deep learning specialization on Coursera. As part of this journey, I hope you get your hands dirty too. Don't be afraid of diving in to build your own project, or go ahead and try to replicate a research paper that you're excited about. One thing that I've seen help a lot of people succeed is if you can build a community or find a community of fellow deep learners you can meet with and study with on a regular basis. In fact, I hope that this Pine AI meetup that you're at right now will be a good place for you to meet these people. I hope you enjoyed the event today and that you learn a lot, both from the talks and from each other. And once again, welcome to the deeplearning.ai community.
Good evening, everybody. Good afternoon and good morning, depending on where you're seeing us from around the world. And welcome to another edition of Pine AI. I'd like to thank deeplearning.ai and Andrew Nang for helping set this up this evening. Today, we have a very special conversation we're going to be having. As you all know, my background is in radiology and been speaking and dealing a lot with radiology AI for various years. And today we're going to be diving deep into a very special topic of utilizing artificial intelligence to be able to reduce radiation dose and be able to improve image processing for CTs and for radiology to be able to help our patients. We saw recently that the Data Science Institute by the American College of Radiology actually put out or did a survey to several members to evaluate what is the state of artificial intelligence in radiology. The survey respondents that came back actually said that out of the people who evaluated the survey, 30% of radiology practices were using artificial intelligence in some capacity. And of the ones that weren't still using artificial intelligence, well, they were planning to have some form of AI, whether they were in the process of implementing or they were planning to implement AI within the next 1 to 5 years. So realistically, we might be seeing AI in some capacity in real world settings for radiology within the next 5 years, potentially in up to 50% of practices. So what kinds of things did they discuss in that paper that we'll be discussing here is the fact that AI adoption right now, it's still in its infancy. It's still growing. It's in this developmental phase. And the typical types of things that people have been using AI, at least based on that research, are things like classifying pathology, annotating images, segmentation, evaluating for different types of diagnostic things such as intracranial hemorrhage, pulmonary emboli, be able to identify even things such as mammographic abnormalities or even lung nodules. But what are some of the things that are going to be transforming patient care? Well, that's what we're going to be discussing this evening. We have to thank our special sponsor, AlgoMedica, who has sponsored both the conversation this evening, as well as some of the panelists to be here and have these discussions. And we'll be talking about how machine learning can be used to reduce false negatives, how it can be used to reduce false positives by improving that image quality, how it can reduce radiation dose, how it can help you with that improved quality, find those subtle kinds of abnormalities that perhaps you wouldn't have been able to see without improved image conspicuity, and how that might improve both the efficiency of the radiologist and of the healthcare setting, how that might improve the lifespan of CT scanners. But before I introduce the panelists this evening, before we dive deep into this conversation, I would like to show a special video by our sponsor, AlgoMedica.
My name is Dr. Arun Krishnaraj. I'm an associate professor of radiology and medical imaging at the University of Virginia, where I'm also vice chair of quality and director of the Division of Body Imaging. PixelShine's patent, pending adaptive processing technology, harmonizes the look and feel of images of different slice thicknesses, different patient sizes, different slices of a study, and different scanners. We found the quality of the lower dose CT scans processed by PixelShine to be equal to those of the standard dose scans. In summary, PixelShine can provide the following benefits. 1, it can empower imaging centers who have older scanners the ability to provide high-quality scans while using patient-safe radiation dose levels without having to spend $500,000 or $1 million in capital.
Hello, I'm Dr. Andrew Smith, a radiologist and chief of body CT at the University of Alabama at Birmingham, and I'll be talking to you about how you can increase productivity and clinical decision support through deep learning CT image processing. Deep learning CT image reconstruction has a number of current uses, including improving image quality, extending the life of a CT scanner, which saves money, decreasing radiation dose, and facilitating high-resolution imaging. Given the improvement in image quality, it is reasonable to predict that DLR will soon be shown to improve diagnostic accuracy and improve productivity by reducing radiologist evaluation time. Let's look at the benefits of DLR another way. DLR reduces image noise. This leads to improvement in CT image quality. This allows for improved accuracy or reduced radiation dose. DLR can extend the usable life of a CT scanner. The improved image quality can improve the efficiency of a radiologist by reducing read times. Both of these save costs, which essentially pays for the DLR software. If you are now interested in DLR for CT image reconstruction, and you should be, you might be wondering how you can get it. There are two main options. GE and Canon Medical offer this technology on their most recent scanners. You may be able to upgrade your scanners if you had a recent purchase, or if you are planning your next purchase. This is likely an expensive approach. To my knowledge, this technology is not available by Siemens or Philips. Further, this would only get you DLR on one or some of your scanners. The other approach is to choose a vendor-neutral solution. This would allow you to have DLR on any or all of the scanners that you choose to activate the service on. This is also a cost-effective approach.
I'd like now to introduce our panelists for the evening that will be discussing this topic. The first is Dr. Tim Stikatovich. He's an associate professor of radiology at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. He specializes in CT, researching everything from CT reconstruction algorithms, very appropriate for this evening, to protocol management and protocol optimization. To date, protocols developed by his team have been shipped to more than 2,000 sites around the globe. He's currently on multiple editorial boards, including the Journal of Computer-Assisted Tomography and Radiographics. Dr. Stikatovich is the author of 36 papers, 2 book chapters, the book, The CT Handbook, Optimizing Protocols for Today's Feature-Rich Scanners, 3 patents, and is a consultant to 5 companies. Welcome, Dr. Stikatovich.
Thank you. Thanks for that great introduction. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. Next up is Dr. Arun Krishnaraj MD, MPH. He is an associate professor at the University of Virginia, where he works clinically in the Division of Body Imaging. He also serves as vice chair for quality and safety, director of the Division of Body Imaging, and director of Body Procedure Service. He is a fervent advocate for greater patient-centered care in radiology and seeks to improve the quality, safety, and efficiency of imaging in healthcare in the United States by leveraging his formal training in public health, clinical radiology, and informatics to maximize radiology's value to society. Welcome, Dr. Krishnaraj.
Thank you for having me, Jose. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, sir. And lastly, but of course not least, Dr. Michael Winkler, MD, MS, CCT, and FICA, received his medical education at the University of Chicago Pritzker School of Medicine, completed his residency in diagnostic radiology and his fellowship in interventional radiology at the Geffen School of Medicine at UCLA. Dr. Winkler is a professor of radiology and internal medicine at the Medical College of Georgia at Augusta University, where he serves as section chief of cardiovascular and thoracic radiology. He is the media lead for the Credentialing Board of Cardiovascular Computed Tomography and chaired the verification committee of the Society of Cardiovascular Computed Tomography from 2018 to 2021. Dr. Winkler also serves on the Intersocietal Accreditation Commission CT Board of Directors as a radiology member at large. His interests include image processing, intravenous access, and procedural imaging. Gentlemen, thank you for making it all here this evening. So we'll go ahead and jump right into it because there's a lot of meat to discuss regarding this particular topic. But we're obviously focusing specifically on deep learning reconstruction for CT processing. So we'll pursue along those things. So in general, let's go around the board, Tim, Arun, and then Mike. How do we believe that that we're at the beginning of a new generation of CT processing? Is that how you see it? And how do you view AI or deep learning based CT processing in general?
Yeah, I think it'll be just like we saw with IR reconstruction, which was introduced, roughly a decade or so ago. That slowly permeated until it became like pretty much the norm on most scanners. This is the new greatest thing. It's probably head and shoulder above what I've seen on a lot of IR. So yeah, I expect it to kind of grow like we saw IR do.
Yeah, no, just as Tim said, AI is seen application in a variety of different spaces. Obviously, our consumer lives are now dominated by a lot of AI tools, and it's now permeating our professional lives. And in radiology, it's been a huge boon. And this is a great area to use it in, something that can allow us to view images cleaner, and something that could supplant the existing technology. And I think AI has been doing that for a while now across the board, and this is a great space to use it in.
Dr. Winkler.
Thank you. I was just finding my unmute button. It's a wonderfully exciting time. We're going to go to new heights in visualization, particularly with any modality that is based on ionizing radiation, where there's a safety concern. AI's made a big impact already on workflow and on top shelf applications like 3D fabrication. And I don't know how quickly it'll take over for iterative reconstruction. I'm still waiting for iterative reconstruction to take over for filtered back projection. One thing that I think is going to be really important is getting the technology out to community hospitals. That's always tough, and it's something we focus on here in Augusta because we're responsible for, taking care, providing healthcare services to the rural parts of Georgia.
So that's a good follow-up. So what is that rate limiting step? How do community hospitals find out about these newer kinds of technologies? And how do you, in your facility down there in Georgia, how do you go about trying to show them the data and also just get them open to it? Because new technologies, you kind of made a joke that iterative reconstruction still hasn't even taken over completely. But how do those community hospitals, how do they keep up with these new types of technologies? How do they find access, and how do you try to promote that access to those folks to make sure that no one's left behind?
It's tough, and there's no magic bullet. It's a little bit like the whole thing with people with vaccination hesitancy. I spoke with an older radiologist yesterday who I was trying to convince to do overlapping reconstruction rather than sequential imagery, reconstruction. For those listening, instead of doing a reconstruction of a 2 millimeter section every 2 millimeters, that would be doing it overlapping, where you do a 2 millimeter reconstruction every 1 millimeter. He was worried about how much that would cost. First he was saying film, and I had to keep correcting him and telling him memory. There was this reluctance to have more images. That hesitancy permeates to the highest levels, where you're trying to get a person to think in a different way, to look at data as a volume rather than image by image. It can be tough. That's just one example. Right. So a lot of it has to do with CME presentations like this, getting out into the community to make changes.
So educational webinars like this, kind of going out there and it's all about education and getting people up to date on it. Tim, you spoke about how, in your opinion, you believe AI or DLR will take over IR. What are some of the limitations of IR that you believe AI and DLR are better at to be able to?
I guess I think from the real world aspect, when you go out into the community, like this could take decades if we don't have new technology. Sim better pump out a lot more informaticists if we're going to have all these types of pushes from our scanners to companies like Algomedica or whatever CAD-E, CAD-X program. Like with the current way that is done by modality side pushes, or even if your site has a DICOM router, like that is so complicated and there's so much expertise locally that's needed. I don't think we're going to see every scan having DL for like I said, over a decade, unless we have more solutions to help actually implement these AI solutions. I don't think it's just about like educating radiologists to like the new look and feel of the images. There's real logistical problems that we've got to solve.
So, but from a real world perspective, why do you believe AI or DLR does better than IR?
Sorry. Yeah. So to specifically answer that question. So I don't, I have no affiliation with Algomedica, but I have done some work with one of the OEMs. You mentioned Canon and GE. So with GE, the GE product, kicked the tires on that. We had a research agreement with them, and it was a lot better than the IR stuff I'd seen in the market in terms of not changing noise texture, not changing spatial resolution. And what I see in the literature, I don't have firsthand experience, but with Algomedica, is just like that True Fidelity GE solution. So I kind of think of them as they're up here, and then what we've seen from some other IR methods is just not as good. And the key thing I think is that noise texture piece, because the first paper that came out for Acer in like 2010, Lepsic was on there for coronary CPA. Sure, people don't care about blotchy images in the artery, right? For what the rad needs to do there. But when you get into the brain and soft tissue, liver, that stuff really destroys images and turns people off. So the blotchy nature of IR. So I think with the AI solutions for deep learning, we won't have that same problem.
Arun, how about yourself? Any particular comments as to why you think AI or DLR is superior to IR from your experience?
Sure. I think, from a patient perspective, we want to minimize radiation dose as much as possible. And as you increase the amount of iterative reconstruction to reduce the dose, the textural aspect of the image, as Tim was kind of referring to, just changes. It looks waxy. One of my colleagues up in Boston used to say it's as if you were looking through a shower door, classic shower doors. And that kind of blotchiness, as Tim used, or waxy appearance, when you're going through a huge stack of images, can be really frustrating, and it can slow you down. So if you have a much cleaner image, then your likelihood of being able to get through the image stack faster, you'll likely potentially be able to make more findings. And honestly, I was on service today. I'm an abdominal radiologist. I've looked at probably 50 or 60 CTs a day, so I probably looked at tens of thousands of images, and any even minor improvement in reducing eye fatigue and helping out the radiologist is a big benefit. So I welcome this technology because I've seen that the images used or produced after filtering through this are just superior. The noise is reduced, but the texture of what we're used to in radiology is maintained. And I think that as more and more radiologists are exposed to images processed in this fashion, that they'll really find it pleasing.
Thank you for that. Dr. Winkler, do you have some additional comments you'd like to make on this?
Oh, I was just trying to pull up a case from today to show people with pseudocolor the difference in the qualities of noise. We were just talking about the melted wax or the pastel. That has to do with the fact that image noise isn't all the same. I think probably everyone on this call grew up at a time when they had a cathode ray tube for a television, not just an X-ray source, and could see the snow on a television, like the HBO logo. That's high frequency noise that's lots of little points. The iterative reconstruction and other filtering noise reduction solutions tend to, as they decrease the amplitude of noise, push the spectrum of noise toward the lower end, so that there's noise, but it's not speckly, it's now blurry. So the holy grail of noise reduction is a algorithm that will decrease the amplitude of noise without shifting the noise frequency. And that's where AI is really coming to the fore, because you can always get noise to zero by painting over, making your image completely uniform. It's just in decreasing noise, what do you do with the spectrum? And that's the real advance.
Do you have an image you want to show?
Oh, go ahead.
I have one. If you guys want to check, just throw this up. Yeah, I can make it full screen. Does that work? Yeah. So on the left is a regular FBP image, and on the right, this is not like JPEG compressed or anything. That's full bore, one of the OEM's iterative method. And that's what all the rads don't like, that coarse graininess or blotchiness or plasticiness or cartoon-like image appearance. So that's what, for those that aren't familiar, this is what we're talking about. Noise standard deviation is lower on the right, but we've lost all that high frequency content. It has like a pseudo lesion-like appearance. I hear a lot of rads comment about that.
So we actually had a question come up, or we had some pre-questions that we developed. Phil, would you throw up that one question, please? So if from Dr. Winkler or Dr. Krishnaraj, if you guys could address this, the issue of IR affecting workflow and productivity. Have either of you had that experience? I know there's some paper, some data out there. I think Dr. Smith mentioned that as well. So Dr. Winkler, you're laughing, so I'll let you go for it first.
Yeah, so Philips, which is what I'm using here, Georgia has 2 flavors of iterative reconstruction, one's statistical and one's model-based. And the model-based iterative reconstruction is so slow, I can't use it. So it's just a non-starter. It takes a half an hour to do a cardiac study. So, and that's really what got me interested in vendor agnostic solution, because what I've done is created a workflow now where in a way, so the reconstruction work of the computer has been taken off of the console of the scanner. So images will be created in filtered back projection and sent to other DICOM nodes where the noise reduction occurs after image reconstruction, and then it goes to the 3D lab. It's a timely thing, not to get too off topic, because the big vendors are moving towards moving the second technologist out of the hospital to a centralized place and cheaper real estate. So it makes sense to move noise reduction out of the scanner lab to somewhere where it doesn't matter if it's slow or it can be done with a extra computer. Yeah, but it's a huge problem with the scanners I have, so we can't use that particular flavor.
Interesting. Tim, Arun, any comments on that?
Sure. Yeah. So I'll give you a real world example. Population health screening, CT colonography. The guidelines from the USPTF have been moved back to 45, so I'm inching closer to that time period. And when you look through CT colon images, clearly the primary goal is to find colonic and intracolonic lesions. But we also issue an interpretation on the extracolonic findings. And for anyone who's looked at a routine process, iterative reconstruction, CT colonography, I joke that the image almost hurts your eyes. The bright peaks of the really bright areas as you scroll through it. It's very difficult to get through those stacks of images, and I'm sure that we are missing extracolonic findings or probably recommending follow-up studies and increasing our extracolonic score for that reason. In fact, we're currently conducting a reader study at UVA where we have taken about 45 CT colonographies, and we have 3 readers, a senior level resident, a junior faculty member, and a senior faculty member, and we're assessing, whether or not they prefer the images that have been processed via deep learning versus those with iterative reconstruction. And we have a medical student on the project who's also timing all of the readers, because our hypothesis is that not only will radiologists prefer the images with the deep learning, but they'll be quicker. So, I mean, that would provide concrete example of improving productivity and helping with workflow. I know that in Tim's institution up in Madison, they do a ton of CT colonography. I can't say we do as many as they do, but if you can just jump through those stacks, because you have to look at, the supine projection, the second projection, you do the 3D fly through. So anything that can help reduce that time and reduce the fatigue that a radiologist experience when reviewing the images is going to be, very welcome by the radiology community.
You talk about fatigue specifically. Have there been studies that have focused on eye fatigue, evaluating the 2 different reconstruction methods?
Well, while our study doesn't specifically look at that question, it is kind of tangentially looking at that question, because if radiologists are quicker and prefer the deep learning reconstructed images, we're going to assume that the converse is true, that the iterative reconstructed images, because of either their eye fatigue or something that frustrates them with the appearance of the image, is the contributor to why they're faster and more productive with the deep learning method.
Interesting. Let's jump into following the CT colonography. Can you talk, Arun, since you are the guru in public health on our panel here, could you give a little bit more background on CT colonography, but also the other CT screening programs that are out there? What's their utility? What's their efficacy? Things of that nature for our audience.
Sure. So let's take the most common screening exam done in radiology, breast imaging. Fortunately, through various campaigns, we have really good rates of breast imaging screening. And we have moderately good rates of colon cancer screening, predominantly through optical colonoscopy, but we believe, especially in this era of a greater focus on social determinants of health and health equity, we know that a lot of populations that are more susceptible to colon cancer would actually rather prefer CT colonography. And the U.S. Preventive Task Force rates CT colonography an A, similar to optical colonoscopy. So it provides yet another option. And again, these are healthy patients, so we don't want to expose them to unnecessary radiation. And we have additional information on the colonography in addition to the colonic findings. So we want to make sure that we can provide that additional detail for the extra colonic finding as accurately as possible. An additional screening study that has radiology has really pioneered is lung cancer screening. And while we know that it's very effective, unfortunately, the penetration of CT lung cancer screening across the United States is poor. Lung cancer is the leading cause of mortality for cancers that are non-cutaneous. And when they present at a late stage, they are often either incurable or patients have to endure, rounds and rounds of chemotherapy for minimal benefit. But if you can identify these lesions early on, then you potentially open up the door to cure for patients that otherwise, when they present late, that wouldn't be an option. So let's take the CT lung cancer screening example. So we have gradually been applying deep learning reconstruction to our CT lung cancer screening population. And now we are routinely performing lung cancer screening low dose at the sub-millisievert level. And when I'd started my fellowship up in Boston, I know that Dr. Thrall, who was the chair at MGH, had launched the Webster Center for Radiation. And one of its goals was to produce a sub-millisievert diagnostic quality image. And it was almost a moonshot. It almost felt like, oh, that's maybe 30, 40 years down the line. Obviously, with the existing technology, that was going to be difficult. But now with the advent of deep learning, it's here already, and we believe we can continue to push it even lower. So the major advantage of that is for any patient that fears radiation exposure as a reason or an obstacle not to seek these effective and really painless screening exams, here's another option that we can put on the table. And when it comes to screening, we need to allow patients to see every option available, whatever's the most convenient to them, because the more that we can screen people, the more we can decrease downstream costs by identifying disease earlier when it can be treated, and ultimately that results in lives saved. So I'm a big proponent of any technology that will allow patients to encourage patients to get screened more frequently.
Yeah, I saw those updates at 45, so I'm right there with you, buddy. So right around the corner for me as well. Mike, I know you do a lot in cardiac CT angiography. Could you give a little bit about the cardiac screening and how this kind of utility could also be benefit for that, and maybe give a little color commentary for the audience as to what that is as well?
Okay, well, for coronary artery calcium scoring studies, the dose is quite low already. And the signal to noise that we need to do the exam is exceeded most of the time. So for that particular technology, what's the incremental benefit of this? Maybe not so much, and I have a case here, let me pull up. I had a clinical case today that I thought was interesting. Oops. Give me a second.
Take your time, Mike. Well, Mike, Tim, any thoughts on getting down to CT dose to X-ray dose level? Do you see that as a reality, and how will that transform patient care? How will that become the standard of care in your view?
I don't think so. I think there'll always be fundamental misconceptions about dose, and that no matter how low we go, there'll always be people that make a career and living out of saying whatever dose you get, you're causing cancer and killing people. I follow the APM and Health Physics Society statements that we're below 50, 100 millisieverts. We're not causing any harm that we can that we actually know for sure. There's like big methodological flaws with a lot of those studies that find dose and diagnostic level. So I don't want to go into a LNT argument today, but that's my rationale for saying no. I don't think it's going to fundamentally change it.
I'll make one quick comment that might be relevant to kind of our current state and what Tim is referencing. Tim is saying from a scientific perspective, from a physicist perspective, the radiation dose as a etiology of downstream cancers is overblown, and I agree with him. But at the same time, there are people who think that the vaccines carry microchips from Bill Gates, and that they will affect your life down the road. I'm here to reaffirm, as a physician, those are two falsehoods, but they're out there, and it's imperative that we continue to address them because patients have these concerns. And if we can do things to reduce radiation dose, there is no harm in that. And if we can continue to educate patients that, as we reduce the dose, the downstream impacts, which were probably negligible or non-existent before, are really off the table. And hopefully that can get people scanned that might have a little bit of cold feet to get scanned.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think constant education and dialogue is very important to kind of defeat those misconceptions. I think Dr. Winkler, you have
right.
You wanted to show? Go ahead.
Right. So I was just saying with the lung cancer screening studies, I haven't been using the AI noise reduction algorithms, but for lung cancer screening, I have quite a bit. This was a lung cancer screening case from today where I saw plaque in the LAD near the second diagonal. And the image in the middle is the stock reconstruction from, this is a Siemens scanner with a bit of iterative reconstruction. Whereas the ones to either side, I have two different, this is iGentle which is a TeraRecon product with increasing the slice thickness, doubling it up. And then this other one here on the left is Pixel Shine, which is the original slice thickness. Those both showed me the actual coronary artery relative to the fat around it. So here I was leveraging a lung cancer screening scan that luckily there wasn't too much artifact to actually be able to, based on calcium alone, say that there was probably mild to moderate stenosis there, and refer this guy also to a cardiologist. I could tell once I used the AI, the diameter of the vessel. I wish I had a better image because I just took a quick screenshot, but I could also do a curved planar reformat through that. So another way to reduce noise is simply to thicken slices, but then you lose detail. So, I mean, this is kind of a nice picture to explain that I have a conventional but very advanced algorithm for noise reduction on the right, but to make it comparable to the AI noise reduction, I had to double up the slice thickness. I think it was tripled. It may say here, it was at least doubled the slice thickness.
Got it. Thank you for that. What are some of the other, let's jump into it. We've done a lot of dose reduction discussions already. Let's jump into some of the other potential cascading effects of improving image quality. Tim, could you address anything that you want to talk about, whether about refining and standardizing protocols from your perspective? How can this be beneficial?
Yeah, thanks. Like when you introduced me, you said we ship protocols around the globe. I'm on a call like once a week or so, answering emails or phones every day about protocol optimization and getting things uniform across enterprises. It's a really big challenge. So like if you look, hopefully the CT vendors don't hear this, but like they've had 50 years of CT to make their images look uniform across their models and between vendors. Like clearly it's not a priority for them, because you look now, there's tons of studies that show like, they don't have the same noise textures. They don't have the same spatial resolution properties. I mean, the vendors don't even offer all the same slice thickness options. So like they're really in some way like letting us down there. If I get a lung cancer screening, like Arun mentioned, I want it to look the same like 3 years later, if my rad is looking at it prior. So I think some downstream effects of this like third party type denoising like is sponsoring today, or if any of the OEMs can, implement like a institution-wide denoising where we take all the local work of reconstruction away from the modality unit and put it somewhere else where it can be managed centrally and done more uniform, that is a huge win. Yeah, forget dose. But now we're talking, all your priors are going to have the same look, feel, and texture for RADs, but also for all these CAD-E, CAD-X, post-processing, FFR, FFR, et cetera, algorithms. That I think is going to be a way bigger win for our field.
I would concur on that one from a practical perspective. Whenever I'm reading old cases compared to new cases, sometimes you say there's, given differences in technique, you think it's unchanged. You see that a lot, and you have to, because there's a lot of differences from that perspective. Arun, any thoughts on that harmonization as well, on productivity from that perspective?
Yeah, no, it's a good point. Like I said, I was on service today and reviewed countless number of CTs, and as Tim had said, they've had 50 years to harmonize their products, to minimize any kind of differences between scanners and between vendors. And it's just not the case. You pull up the outside interpretation of the prior study at an academic medical center. We get referred cases from all over the region, and they're done on a variety of different scanners. And we have to, unfortunately, hedge and add disclaimers, like you said, Jose, that, while adjusting for differences in technique, et cetera. The radiologist loves the classic rule of the inverse rule, where the longer the dictation, the less we know what we're talking about, right? So, and there's nothing a radiologist loves than adding more disclaimers and accounting for this, reduce sensitivity, this and that. And the more that we can minimize that kind of language, the more that we can be specific, better care we can provide to patients. I know I sound like a broken record here, but ultimately, all the efforts that we do on the protocoling end and the reduction of radiation and on the education is targeted towards improving patient care. They are the end product of everything that we do and all the work that we do. So we do them a great disservice if we have all these great modern tools and we aren't optimizing them to provide the best care possible. And as radiologists, hedging and not providing as specific an answer to, why does my abdomen hurt? Do I have lung cancer? Am I in need of a cardiac intervention? These are important questions that radiologists answer every day. And any tool that can improve our accuracy and assist us is something that we should really pursue.
Absolutely concur on that. Do you guys see this as a potential way to improve productivity from radiologists? I know we talked about the image quality. You're looking at that right now, Arun. Are there other studies out there that have looked at as to whether this can actually improve productivity, which therefore improves the bottom line for institutions and for private practice radiologists as well?
I'm not, like I said, we are conducting some studies. I don't have at ready reference a series of studies that I can say prove that this technique or anything for that matter makes a radiologist more productive. Clearly, my joke I like to say is, if you ask an administrator who's the best radiologist, they'll look down the line and say the person with the highest RVUs and the lowest report turnaround time. But if you enter a radiology reading room and you ask that same question, it's rarely going to be the same person. But if we can get those two to align, then we can make everybody happy. If we can make people quicker and we can make people more accurate and get the reports out because they're not spending as much time fatigued in scrolling through the studies, then all the better. Ultimately, the return on investment and the financial formula for whether to embrace a new technology has to be considered. You can't just live in your ivory tower and think that we'll just sit around and do what we want to. So, and I think there is a good return on investment in this type of technology, because I think it does and will lead to improved productivity.
How about Tim or Mike, from the technologist perspective, do you see it being able to produce to improve their productivity and efficiency from a workflow perspective at that level?
Well, there's a disruption coming to technologists, and some see it with trepidation, others see it as an opportunity. We're going to, in the next 10 years, see a reduction in the number of in-hospital technologists by half. Typically now you have a technologist who's at the console of the scanner and a technologist that's in the room hooking the patient's IV to the tubing for the contrast injection, positioning them using the laser to center the patient. Well, some of those things, centering has become automated. Siemens machine now does that all automatically. But what will happen is that the person who is pushing buttons at the console will be housed somewhere else. They'll be living somewhere else, doing that for multiple scanners at once. The techs with the higher level of experience will be in those roles, and the techs who are just learning, or tech assistants even, will be the ones in the room. And all of the new technology, like things of this nature, where you can send raw data or raw images away from the scanner someplace where it's treated uniformly, frees that tech from the actual physical scanner. So this is already happening. We're already trying to figure out how to regulate it, and it hasn't required FDA approval. So right now, just like teleradiology revolutionized what we did, moved a lot of radiologists out of hospitals into bigger groups, created economy of scale. The same thing is happening with technologists, because the computers at the scanner are no longer the pigeonhole. You don't have to rely on them doing the reconstruction. You don't have to rely on the tech being there.
Tim?
I don't know. I guess I don't know about that. I think I work with some companies, that are making automatic protocoling tools to take the protocoling away from rads, any physician really, and even the techs. It queries EMR, it knows what's wrong with the patient, it knows what the right way to bill it, order it, scan it is. Right. And then when it comes to the scanner side technology, there's a ton of more automated workflows where I think we'll see less and less expertise needed at scan side, because there's going to be an in-room camera that'll help with positioning, help with proper technique selection, help with proper bolus tracking and ROI placement for the bolus tracking. So what is complicated today, figuring out what protocol to use for a coronary or getting the timing right on a PE, I think we're going to have AI type, I see them now being productized. So I think the future is going to be maybe not remote techs, more tech, smarts on the modality unit itself. And where AI reconstruction plays a role, I think once you have a computer that's smart enough to know what protocol to select and how to tune it for that patient, it makes total sense that if Arun or Mike or you, Jose, want to see your MIPS 5mm made like this, and your coronals and your sagittals at this slice thickness with this kernel, the tech's not going to have to do all of that. It's going to know, oh, it's a PE. You need all these types of images. It's either going to make them automatically on the scanner or on the cloud using a DL recon.
Yeah, precision imaging for each radiologist. I'm sure that'll lessen headaches for a lot of techs. Let's take a question from the audience here. This is from Surya Gurneni. Are there models to improve images in older scanners? And I think this is a good segue into vendor neutrality kind of questions and potentially extending life of scanner questions. How feasible is it to implement on these older scanners? And how useful is it in rural and low and middle income countries? Mike, why don't we go to you first, because you mentioned some of this in passing. I think you're on mute.
Right. So that's why I'm so interested in vendor agnostic. I mean, there is a vendor, but they're agnostic to the bigger vendors. So if you can apply the AI in two different points in the volumetric visualization workflow. You can apply it after a scan is done, before image reconstruction occurs. That's what GE and Canon Medical Group are doing, or you can apply it after image reconstruction. If you lose some things, we'll table for now doing that, but if you do it afterwards, then all of a sudden you have a product that can retroactively denoise everything into the past. It can denoise any study that someone brings to you from outside. It can work for all of your scanners. So, and it's really, if you hear the quotes from the vendors for, upgrading a current system to AI or to buy a scanner with AI, it's prohibitively expensive. So, for me, just like in the 3D printing world where we had some big vendors with astronomical prices, many labs went open access, open source, smaller niche products that weren't that expensive. I think that for the community, we're going to go that way as well. We're not going to be buying AI from GE. We'll be buying it from a third party.
So I'm reminded, Jose, of a line from William Gibson, and again, I'm going to get on my broken record about patience, but the line is, the future is already here. It's just unevenly distributed. And I think that's the case with, the three of us work at academic centers that have access to the latest and greatest technologies. We push the envelope, and that's great, but we aren't seeing the majority of patients that are scanned in the United States. I'll give you a concrete example. Buckingham County in southwestern Virginia, rural, low socioeconomic status, high rates of smoking, high rates of lung cancer. They have old scanners, and we have worked with some of those institutions to implement our protocols. And then if we can layer deep learning reconstruction onto that, then we can give many of those patients who aren't going to come to Charlottesville in central Virginia the opportunity to receive high quality imaging at a low dose, and then we can pack in that interpretation if necessary. So this AI wave that's sweeping the nation tends to be something that is impacting, the first world and high-end centers. And we need to work to try to make sure that there isn't this huge gap in the technology available in an academic center and a normal community hospital. As Mike was saying, they're not going to be able to afford the latest and greatest, newest scanners with this technology built in. So it's likely going to be something that is purchased through, a vendor-neutral company that can process these images in the cloud and then push them back out.
Tim?
Yeah, I'll just add to that. I just gave a talk for Amazon and GE for this Amazon Health Cloud thing they have, right? And the word we used a lot was democratize. And I totally agree with Arun here that I think if you've got an outside study coming in, a lot of places are just going to automatically have to redo, that study, or they're not going to like the images and have to spend extra time maybe calling the scanner, but that's pretty rare to try to get that place to do something with those images. So having a cloud-based tool to reconstruct them at the quality of the major medical center, could stop a lot of wasted repeated scanning just when the rad isn't getting the view and the slice thickness, et cetera, that they want. So yeah, I think there's a role for democratizing some of this and having an impact in the rural communities because of that. So my use case is when they're getting referred to a larger center for more complicated treatment.
Thank you for that. We're coming up here towards the top of the hour. So we've just been discussing a lot. There's been a lot of takeaways, I think, from this evening. And I want to thank all of you for giving us your time and your energy, and obviously the amount of intellect that's been poured into this, your expertise, which goes back to Dr. Krishnaraj's perspective of, getting this kind of message out, how experts have, you've been spending a lot of time, you've been trying to do this, you've been trying to improve medicine, radiology, the quality of care that we give to our patients and to our communities. at the end of the day, artificial intelligence, we talk about the democratization of healthcare, of trying to get it out to everyone, of not being able to get it there. Why do you individually believe these types of applications need to be in the community, and who at the end of the day is the one that benefits most? And if it's many people, and if it's not, if it's just one, then who is it that you think benefits the most out of these types of applications? Why do you think we need this out there? Mike, I'll start with you, buddy.
Can I show a case? I was able to, while we were sitting and talking, trying to wrangle the computer, de-identify one from today. I think sometimes just showing it a case of noise reduction would help. If that's okay, I'm gonna.
Do you have it ready to show?
It's ready.
All right, Philip, can you pull it up, please?
Let's see, share screen.
Just went away on the background. There we go.
Okay, so this is just hot off the press. I have noise. I've done noise reduction 2 different ways here. All the way on the left is this was a lung screening scan, very noisy. This was with intermediate strength iterative reconstruction from the vendor. Here in the middle is AI noise reduction, and then here on the radiologist left and right. On my left is conventional noise reduction and slice thickening. So in this case, my resident missed, it's not going to be a big problem for the patient, but missed a gallstone. So, I use this for him as an example of how if you use all your tools, you're going to find more pathology. And right down here at the bottom, you can see the gallstone. And, Arun, this is your territory. I normally am not interested in the gallbladder whatsoever, but that's it. It's something for nothing. It was a lung cancer scan. You might have missed that, but if you routinely use this tool, if you use AI, even if it's just and this study was from our outlying community imaging center with a low-end scanner, you can find a ton of stuff.
So at the end of the day, I would say that you think it's for the patients that we're doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. For the patients, and because it's amazing.
I'll build on what Mike said, and I'll end my broken record here. It's always about the patients, whether it be the pediatric patient whose mother or father are concerned about getting scanned, and there's not an MR at a small community hospital, and they need to get a pediatric CT done, whether it's the reluctant smoker in rural southwestern Virginia who wants to use, I read something in the newspaper about CT scans causing cancer, who won't get his lung cancer screening scan. It's the patient who has an incidentally detected lesion in their kidney on a CT colonography that ends up saving their life, or a report that talks about steatosis in the liver that changes someone's lifestyle. Everything we do is for the patients. And I'm glad if radiologists find this technology useful and helpful, if administrators feel like the return on investment is good. But ultimately, as a physician, all I care about is making sure that the patients I take care of get the best care possible.
Awesome. Tim?
Yeah, the facet, I'll say, of course, the patient, but I think short-term for the radiologist, to give them more reports sent from other third-party countries that don't do denoising. They give them some quantitative number to help them do better risk stratification or fall, through some scoring criteria aspect or whatever score they get. And when we've got a uniform look and feel for images across every scanner in your fleet and outside studies that say a cloud-based like denoising approach will give you, we know all those post-processing AI type tools do much better with a steady, uniform diet of input data. So I think there's no question there that there's a benefit for the rad and then eventually the patient because of that reason.
Awesome. Well, gentlemen, thank you all. This was a very deep discussion into DLR. If any of you from the audience would like to find out more information, please go to algomedica.com. We would like to thank Algomedica for their sponsorship for this evening, for this talk. Honestly, thank you to deeplearning.ai for also sponsoring this discussion, and for our partners, Halospace. Check them out as well for all the wonderful things that they're doing in the community, particularly in the Pacific Northwest, and through all the channels that they are promoting and trying to do the good in the world that they're doing. Gentlemen, thank you for what you've been doing. Thank you for being in this world. Thank you for taking time with us this evening to show us all the wonderful things that you guys are trying to do for your patients, for your radiologists, and for your friends and colleagues. I thank you all very much. And to the audience, thank you for joining us again. Please stay tuned for our next Pi and AI. Have a good evening, everybody.
Thanks, Jose.
Thank you, everyone.
We'll get you down to Augusta for some golf.
Absolutely.
You guys too, Tim.
Yes.
Tim, I'll be catching up with you later.
Uh-oh. Okay.
Bye.
See you guys. Thanks.
Thank you very much.